Hey there.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good. Glad to be back for our second episode.
Me too. So y'all, we are joining you on a Wednesday instead of a Thursday. I know last week when we launched, we said we'll be here every Thursday, but Mindy's got to leave town tomorrow, and we had our first breakfast this morning. So we thought now would be a good time to chat a little bit about the topic that we chatted about at the breakfast. So, Mindy, you want to kick us off?
Yeah. Welcome, everyone. Excited to be back with you. And thanks for the adjustment to a Wednesday. I'm actually going to be in Houston teaching a leadership class tomorrow. So excited for that. So today we got together in Austin, which we're going to do once a month to bring together a community of women leaders. And we talked about, what leadership challenges people had, kind of getting to know each other. It was really fantastic. It's exciting because what we're hoping to bring to you with this podcast, with our in-person breakfast, as well as our cohorts that are launching, is to really create these various spaces for women to take the lead, change the game, get some tips and tools, ask some questions, get some support, be pushed a little bit. I think we definitely pushed some people today. Yeah. Even though it was a friendly, nice coffee breakfast, we still push people to get out of their comfort zone. So excited about that. Anything to add, Lindsay, to that?
Absolutely. I mean, specifically this morning, we talked about how to ask for what you need. And, to the point of pushing people outside their comfort zone, I think the first thing that we started hearing when we said, okay, let's talk about, our topic for the breakfast is all of the barriers and limitations people have to doing that. And so, one of the things that someone mentioned was, I'm worried that people will question my motivation, right? Mm-hmm. I'm worried that if I ask them, if I start asking for things, I'm worried that if I'm ask someone to hang out or if we go to coffee or whatever, that they question my motives for asking them to hang out. And, our main piece of feedback there was, when you want to ask someone to coffee, to ask them to, if you can present at a organization where they are on the board or whatever it is, say it in the email, right? Or in the text or however. So, say, hey, it's been a while. Like, I'd really love to catch up. Plus, I want to talk to you a little bit about, what I'm doing and whether there would be any overlap there or whatever it is. You don't have to give the whole ask in the email, but you can put them on notice, and then they're not going to question your motives because you've let them know. And it's one, then weird if you don't bring it up. And two, you're giving them the power to say no via email if they then want to decline the coffee or whatever it is. Mindy, what else did people talk about?
Yeah, and one thing to add to that is it's okay to ask for what you want. So, we said the question today, how to ask for what you need. It's okay to ask, and you just have to get comfortable asking. And the other thing that came up was a couple folks at the breakfast said, I don't want people to feel put out. I don't want to feel indebted to people. That's sort of their barrier to asking for what they need. And one thing I've really learned, both through needing to ask for help, but also being on the receiving end of being asked for help, is people like to help out. And so most of the time, when you ask somebody for help, it gives them some purpose too. And so don't just think about it as, oh gosh, I don't want to ask because, I don't want to put them out, or what if they're busy, or, they should just know to do this for me. I think that, I find when people ask me for my help, I love it. I like to give help. It makes me feel connected to that person. It makes me feel like they trust me. And so when you're asking for help, or you're asking for something you need, and maybe it's, hey, I really need to build some clients up, or I really want to go after this job. Do you have someone I can network with? I would say 99% of the time, the person is going to be happy you asked them, because we all want to feel needed. We all want to feel that we have some sort of purpose. And so think about that. And then oftentimes we're asking people who are really good at what they do. And so they like sharing their talents. And so, you know, I got a text yesterday from someone who asked me for a donation. And I actually had previously wanted to give them a donation, but I was in a situation, I didn't have my credit card, I couldn't do it. But I was so happy they asked me again last night. And it wasn't weird. And they didn't beat around the bush. How are you? How's your kids? They just said, hey, can you donate to my campaign? And I said, sure. And I had my credit card and it was ready to go. So I felt happy to give. I felt happy to be thought of. And it was a good reminder because I wanted to. I just at the time when they initially asked me, I wasn't in a position to do so. So,
yeah, no, definitely. Another thing I think we heard from at least one person when we said, you know, how do we ask for what we need? What are the challenges? I think at least one person said, I don't know what you even mean by that. When you say, how do we ask for what we need? Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because I would tell everybody who's listening that you do have to take a step back into real deep self-awareness about this question. So the question is, the question we've posed is how to ask for what you need. But really the first question is, what do you need?
Yeah.
Like, so don't go to how to ask first, like, what do I need? And that, to me, that's the biggest part of this exercise. And you have to have a lot of self-awareness because sometimes we don't really know what we need. And we've never felt maybe vulnerable enough to ask ourselves, like, what do I need in this moment? Do you need actual money? Do you need a job? Do you need a recommendation? Do you need referrals? Do you need someone to give you a pep talk? Whatever it is, but you're going to have some of that self-awareness to say, okay, in this moment, what do I need? And I'll tell you, like, the way that I do this in business, in my life, with my kids, whatever it may be, is I take a big step back and I find some quiet time to write this down. And I really think about, like, well, what is my prioritization? Like, what are my goals? So let's say I want to ask something for my business. I will say, well, what are my goals? What am I trying to achieve? What is this going to lead me to? What am I really looking for? And by that process of sort of prioritization, becoming self-aware about what is it that I'm really trying to accomplish, the asking how to, or asking someone for help becomes a lot more clear because now I have a precise ask. If I go to you, Lindsay, and I just say, Lindsay, I want to grow my business. Can you help me? Like, you're going to be like, sure, I'd love to, but what does that mean? Yeah. If I come to you and say, hey, Lindsay, I'm really looking to, expand my reach in crisis management. And I get a lot of my referrals from employment lawyers. Do you have some employment lawyers I could reach out to? You're going to say, yes, I have 3 friends. Here's their emails. Done. Right. So you've helped me expand my business, but I needed to figure out what I needed. And so make sure that when you're, thinking you need some help or you want some support or you want to make a big ask, go back and figure out, like, what does that really mean for me? And what are my goals? That will help you when you get to the ask. And that self-awareness can be tough. And I will say, it is vulnerable to be in that place to say, okay, I can't do this by myself. I don't have the power, the influence. I don't know that person, or I'm lacking confidence, or I'm lacking, something in my life. Like, it's hard. So don't just think of it as like, oh, that'll be so easy. It may take you a little bit of time and journaling to figure that out.
Yeah. I mean, I remember sort of on a personal level, a year, maybe year and a half ago, I had done some therapy work because I was sort of transitioning out of like a big, work role. And my kids are now sort of heading into their tweens. And so I had this like time and space that I had not experienced since before my kids were born. And I remember sort of like a big aha moment of like, well, you need a hobby. What do you like to do for fun? And I was like, no one has asked me that question, including myself, in 12 years. Like, I don't have any idea. I don't have any idea what I like to do for fun.
Yes.
And so, yeah, definitely like figuring out what are our values? What are our priorities? What are our goals? Like all of those things, we want to have clear vision on that before we make asks towards those ends. Now, some of it I think is exploratory, right? If it's like, I'm interested in crisis management, not I want to grow the business. Do you know anyone else who does crisis management? I just want to take them for coffee and bend their ear. Like, that's totally fine. Yeah. But we want to know what we want so that we can make it easy on the person we're requesting.
Yeah. And one thing I want to bring up, Lindsay, because we're talking about women in leadership, and that's the focus of our work and this podcast, is I want to go back to what you just said about like trying to define what fun is. It's interesting because I went to a therapist last year in February of 2024. And it was sort of, it was someone who helps sort of women leaders, but who are raising kids and just all the things, right? So it was therapy. And she said to me, when was the last time you had a lot of fun? And I was like, fun? What are you talking about? Fun? What is this fun you speak of? And I know a lot of women leaders feel like that. Like, I've had fun since before the kids or before this high-powered role I took. Yeah. And what she told me was, I need you to write down what you actually have fun, like where you actually laugh. And not just like fun, like for me, fun sometimes is like, let me go run a 5K and kill myself. Yeah, same. More, but like, when are you laughing? And I will say, like, part of the, when we say, what do we need right now? I would encourage women in leadership to also think not just on the professional side, but what do you need right now? At that time, I needed to be able to laugh. And I know it sounds weird, but like every day I needed to have something that made me laugh, and I couldn't figure it out at first. So I was like, I don't know what I have fun doing. I don't know. And now I have my list, and it's on my phone of things that make me laugh and things that I have fun doing. And it's been super helpful for my career and for my entire kind of well-being. So
yeah, definitely. There is a book that probably a lot of folks that watch this podcast have heard of, and maybe you've heard of, Mindy. It's called Fair Play, and it's about spousal relationships and like basically about division of tasks in the household. But one of the things that the author talks about is unicorn space. And it's essentially that. It's like our play unicorn space. And that's one of the things that we probably need to advocate for the hardest and need to ask for the most, because it's so easy to just be like, oh, I'll get to play later. And then fast forward 12 years and someone's like, what do you like to do? And it's like, I don't know. So definitely. I want to talk about a woman who is a researcher. Her name is, I believe it's Alison Fragel is how you pronounce it. She's a researcher at UNC Chapel Hill, and she wrote a book called Likeable Badass. And she talks a lot about gaining status, which is your people's perception, others' perception of you. And, obviously what our status is and how people perceive us holds a lot of weight in terms of us getting what we want and being able to ask for what we need and get it. And so she talks about that in order to gain status, you need to be viewed as both warm and assertive or competent. And I was listening to a podcast that she did, and somebody asked, well, is there a difference between men and women? Like, what are the gender differences? And she said, no, with respect to like both men and women need to be perceived as warm and assertive in order to gain status, but that men have oftentimes assumed status, meaning that they walk into a room and everyone assumes that they're warm and competent. Whereas women are usually seen as either warm or assertive, but not both. Mm-hmm. And so women are sort of starting backwards, right? We have to earn it, whereas men have to just maintain it and not lose it, which is very, very different. And specific to sort of asking for what we want, she had this challenge that I really liked called collecting no's, which basically means that, over a certain timeline, let's say in the next 2 weeks or the next month, I want to ask for something. And my goal is to get a no on 10 different occasions. It doesn't need to be from 10 different people. It can be, you're like, one of the podcasts said that most of her no's came from her daughter, her teenage daughter, but it's one, gives us practice to be assertive and warm, but also it normalizes asking for things maybe in some high risk ways, but also in some low risk ways, like asking for an upgrade on your hotel room or something, something lower. And so I want to throw that out there in case anyone wants to practice collecting some no's.
Yeah, I think it's great. And I think that this is really important in work because a lot of the leaders that I coach will say to me, hey, I want this new role. I want to move up into the VP role, or I want to move up into the C-suite. And I will often say, like, well, have you asked for the opportunity? Like, have you went to, for example, if you want to become the COO of a company, have you went to the COO and said, hey, can I do like a week of ride along with you to see what you do? No one does that. The people who become the COOs, though, they do that. But that may seem like, oh my gosh, I could never. But maybe that's too big of a potential no. But I will say most of the time you'll get a yes, but also just ask for things that, I'd like to work on this kind of a project. I'd like to learn this thing. I do like this idea of asking for hotel upgrades, asking for, an extra set of pretzels on the airplane, whatever it may be, as the low barrier to entry, if you're not used to asking for things. But I love that. And I think it helps you to be more assertive. And I think people really need to think of what assertive means for them. All of us are very different. And so assertive for me looks a little bit different than someone else. So you have to find that flow of assertiveness for you. And one quick point is get feedback from people close to you or people you work back on. You can simply ask people like, do you think I was assertive enough? Or how did my assertiveness come out to you?
Yeah.
You can also say like, how warm am I? Lindsay and I are both attorneys. We've both been trial attorneys. We can both turn it up into the intensity. And so sometimes we have to be mindful of that, right? So like if I'm sometimes cool, I need someone to remind me. So we need some feedback along the way. So
100%. And doing this gives a low barrier practice to when you do want to ask for the raise, the position, whatever it is. Because I think we spend a lot more time ruminating about problems and less time thinking about how am I going to word this? Like literally, how is this going to come out of my mouth? When do I want to do it? Where do I want to do it? And as we practice those things, I think it gets easier. I mean, I remember, when I was in the CEO role of not a nonprofit that I founded, the fundraising piece was absolutely that, where like it feels so uncomfortable if you're not used to it to ask people to give to the organization that you run. And I didn't know how. And so I just wouldn't. But as soon as I found this like authentic to me way to invite people to give, it became like so much easier. And also like no's are not personal most of the time. Like, I mean, sometimes they are, but most of the time they're not personal. Yeah. People just don't have bandwidth or that's not a particular thing they're interested in or whatever. And being able to normalize that, it became so much easier for me to ask for what I want or need.
Yeah. And the last thing I want to say is really lean into your authenticity. Somebody at the breakfast this morning, brought something up and I said, well, this is what I do, but you have to find your flow. You have to find how this works for you, because I may make a joke to break attention, but that may not work for you. And so, there's no one size fits all. Lindsay, I do want to, in our last minute or so, it's interesting because we sort of set people up because we said, hey, we want you to ask for something you need. And so we're around a table and I thought it was great. Tell us what you need, like make your ask. You want to talk about what happened with that?
Yeah, it was really neat. And I also think like not only being the asker, but also asking people how we can support them. I mean, that's another thing when you talk about like questioning motives. It's like, Mindy, I can ask you for something, but then I also like, what can I do to support you? And that was a really neat way to kind of end the breakfast. One person in particular was like, I don't want to be too salesy, which again is like going to sort of the limitations that we place on ourselves, but I'd really love more exposure, right? Like I want people to know that I exist and I'm out there. And like 5 minutes later, that person had 3 different people with different like presentations or CLEs, which is a presentation for lawyers that they could give. People were writing stuff down and wanting to connect with each other, which I found, like, I walked away from that being like, this is what these breakfasts are about, and was really, really heartened by that.
Yeah. And so I think in closing, this experience of this breakfast today, but also just being here with you all today, is let's ask for what we need, whether it's fun, whether it's exposure in a speaking capacity, whether it's business and clients, a new role. We'll get more comfortable asking for what we need, and we're here to offer you tips. Those of you in Austin, come to our next breakfast. Those of you not in Austin, stay tuned. Every week we'll be back here with these podcasts with tips and tools. You can always send us a message on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, email, call us, send me a postcard, whichever works for you. Lindsay has a pigeon living in her backyard, so I'm sure we can get pigeon mail as well. But it was awesome this morning, and I'm so excited to build this community with Lindsay and with everyone who's joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Mindy, and thanks to everyone watching. And for those who joined us at the breakfast this morning, it was so energizing. And we will see you next Thursday. We'll be back to Thursdays next week. Awesome. Take care, everybody.
Bye.